Hello, this is chapter 178 of The Flower of Freedom by Deborah J. Reeves. All rights to both the book and presentation are reserved. We welcome you back. We're closing in on the end of the first book of a trilogy. After the final chapter of this book, we plan to start right in on the next book. We hope you'll stay with us for that as well. Our main concept here is to sow the seeds of a virtuous cycle. We hope to be sowing a little entertainment and relaxation into your life, about 8 minutes worth. And you can take whatever you can spare of that, and we hope that you will consider sharing it as a kindness in someone else's life. Here we go, chapter 178, Ensnared and Released. There was a lot of investigative activity in Canada at that point in time. When the RCMP phoned Argentina to inform the police force there that one of their citizens had died in Canada, the Argentinians said that they would get back to the RCMP as soon as they heard the name of the deceased. That answer startled the young officer who had been assigned to the duty, so he went back to Detective Sergeant Richard to inform him. Richard said that the return call should be routed to him. The call eventually came from someone who sounded like he was of high rank in their military service. The man said that he was a general. That put Richard on even higher alert. The man officiously informed Richard that they would forbid the return of Schmidt's remains. You're declining the repatriation of one of your citizens? He was carrying an Argentinian passport. It's sitting on the desk in front of me. A police officer removed it from a pocket in the jacket he was wearing when he died. Not so. Hans Schmidt never achieved full Argentinian citizenship, so we will not receive his body. Cremate him as a John Doe and give him an early glimpse of hell for all we care. We have informed the lawyer who acts on his behalf in an attempt to help you with a potential set of connections in order to learn where he wanted his body sent. The lawyer had no idea. He had previously been instructed to liquidate all of Hans Schmidt's assets immediately upon receiving proof of his death. But Hans never considered his own demise in the near term. The lawyer has no idea and no instructions pertaining to the body. He has only given instructions of what to do with everything in Schmidt's estate. So, if you would be so kind as to forward an official death certificate, we will take care of erasing all evidence of that cretin's life in Argentina. He resided in Argentina since the end of World War II, and yet you're telling me that he never gained full citizenship, but he was able to obtain a passport? Richard asked incredulously. The man who claimed to be a general sighed and said, he entered the country under a dispensation from Perón, who was long dead. Perón himself was a signatory on the agreement, and although it's written on government stationery, I am reliably advised by members of our Supreme Court that it was an agreement between Perón and Schmidt. I have read the conditions of that invitation and the benefits that were offered. That proffer was based on the condition that Schmidt would bring a vast amount of wealth, and it offered him safe haven. Many of us within the country have been constricted by that agreement that was made with other Nazis as well for decades. Given that Perón is no longer living, and given that Schmidt has ordered his resources to be sent to someone in Canada, and given that Schmidt is dead, he is no longer in compliance with the contract. Factoring in the reality that he was also a criminal, we consider ourselves well rid of him. We have no desire to allow a shrine to be erected to the monster of Paris. So you were aware of who he was then? The monster of Paris liked his title, and he never laid low in Argentina. Unfortunately, he came in with a lot of money, and he came in right after the World War on an open invitation from Perón. He was untouchable, absolutely untouchable. I had family members who tried to make an end run around that agreement in the intervening years. One is dead, one is in a vegetative state. Everyone associated with their police teams is no longer a police officer. They were all fired. Many were persecuted by Hans and his compatriots, a plague of militarized strongmen. It remains my duty to follow the laws and the instructions of my superiors, Detective Sergeant Richard. I'm sure that you understand the vice between a legitimate authority and human decency in which police officers are sometimes trapped. I have my orders, and it seems to me that a dead Nazi is no longer a Nazi that can support political agendas. This is our opportunity to act in a manner which might sting the remaining Nazis into civility. We are under no illusions about what he did in our nation. Unfortunately, he was rich and he had powerful friends. Someone did us all a favor in eliminating him. I offer my condolences for the damage he did in your country. We will be writing off almost an entire cabinet of his crimes that we are quite certain that he perpetrated here in Argentina. All these years later, Nazi thinking is still damaging so many desperate places. Can you tell me who's going to receive the estate of Hans Schmidt? If there's someone here in Canada who is a sympathizer, I should start surveillance on that individual for the safety of our population. Just one moment, Detective Sergeant Richard. I have that information on my desk somewhere. Richard heard the shuffling of papers through the handset. A moment later, the man returned to the conversation. Ah, here it is. Schmidt's lawyer told our interviewer the name. We forced it out of him, and we forced him to show us the will and all the provisions to ensure that the information was accurate, that the entire massive estate, both in finance and in actual property, is being sent to a Canadian citizen named Bertrand Saint Laurent. He currently resides in Montreal. The general thought he heard a gasp, but he went on. Schmidt claims that the man is his son. When our people did a search on the palatial house where he lived and the penthouse apartment he owned, our people found a framed birth certificate in another name, though. That claimed his son was Herbert Hans Schmidt, and the certificate was issued in Canada. There was also a framed marriage license between Hans Herbert Schmidt and one Colette Picard. After that conversation concluded, Detective Sergeant Richard looked at the phone, and he wondered what he was going to do now that he was saddled with the body of a famous Nazi war criminal. The general from Argentina had been right. No one wanted a shrine to a guy like that in their nation. Richard thought for a moment, and he decided to call Father Joe to get some spiritual guidance on this one. That's the end of chapter 178. The next chapter is called Internment. We invite you back to share the rest of this story, and we hope that you will consider planting your first seed for a virtuous cycle, and We hope that you'll consider watering any seeds you come across until these seeds can sprout and grow into the trees of righteousness that we all need. Thank you. I remain your friend, Deborah.